The Holy Gospel according to St. Mark, the 8th chapter.
Glory to you, O Lord.
Jesus began to teach them that the Son of Man must undergo great suffering and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the scribes, and be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He said all this quite openly, and Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. But turning and looking at his disciples, he rebuked Peter and said, "Get behind me, Satan, for you are setting your mind not on divine things, but on human things." He called the crowd with his disciples and said to them, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake and for the sake of the gospel will save it. For what will it profit them to gain the whole world and forfeit their life? Indeed, what can they give in return for their life? Those who are ashamed of me and of my words in this adulterous and sinful generation, of them the Son of Man will also be ashamed when he comes in the glory of his Father with the holy angels." The Gospel of our Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Christ.
Please be seated. Let us pray. Gracious Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of each heart here be acceptable in your sight, our strength and our Redeemer. Calvin Coolidge once said, "I have never been hurt by anything I didn't say." Have you ever said anything really dumb? You don't need to raise your hand. Maybe said something that came out all wrong? Well, I misspeak so often that my embarrassing moments have kind of blurred all together. And I can usually laugh about them, but inside I still cringe. The only times that I'm bothered by them, of course, is when I say something inadvertently and hurt somebody. Well, as an unknown author once said, it's better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. And then there's this cute little poem that says, "Be careful of the words you say and keep them soft and sweet. You never know from day to day which ones you'll have to eat." Well, perhaps it's because misery loves company, but personally, it's encouraging to me to find out that other people make the same kinds of mistakes that I do. It makes me feel normal instead of feeling like an idiot, which is probably how Peter felt after his encounter with Jesus in our gospel reading today. In this passage, we hear what sounds like a pretty scathing rebuke from Jesus to Peter. You know, Peter was a pretty important guy in the early church. Jesus has just changed Peter's name from Simon to Peter and told everybody, "It is on this rock that I will build my church." Peter had to be feeling on top of the world. You know, the future must have looked bright and sunny. And then Jesus starts talking about going to Jerusalem and being crucified, and the bright and sunny future suddenly clouded over right in front of Peter. So Peter took Jesus aside, and he scolded him for talking like that. And Jesus then rebuked him. "Get behind me, Satan." Now, I hear these words, and I kind of gasp a little bit. You know, it sounds so very harsh. But to be honest, I don't think that Jesus was necessarily being harsh here. I don't think he was calling Peter Satan. I don't think he was saying that Peter is evil. I think he was saying, "Please, Peter, don't tempt me. Do you realize how hard it is for me to keep walking this path when I know that it's going to end at the cross? You have your eyes on human things. I have to keep my eyes on the cross." Peter just didn't understand. And so Jesus reminded Peter of the purpose of his ministry. It's not fame or fortune. He didn't anticipate a bright and sunny future for himself. He was here to do the difficult task of saving the world. And that led to the cross. And then Jesus says, not only is he going to bear a cross, but he wants those who follow him to also take up a cross too. He wants his followers to pick up a cross and walk in his footsteps. Mother Teresa once heard of a family of 9 that was starving to death. And so she got some rice together and she went over and gave the family enough rice to prepare a meal. But the woman of the house took the rice and divided it in 2, and she put half of the rice into a bag and began to leave. And of course, Mother Teresa is surprised, and she asked her where she's going. And the woman said that she was going to visit another family that she knew was also starving. That's what picking up your cross and following Jesus looks like. Following Jesus involves cross-bearing, voluntarily taking on the burdens of others. It means caring about other people, choosing to endure pain and problems for the sake of others. It means choosing to sacrifice some of our comforts so that someone else can be comforted. The Christian faith always leads to the cross. It begins with what Christ did for us, and then from that sacrifice, it sends us out into a life of service, a life of carrying our own crosses. Now, when I talk like this, I sometimes wonder, why in the world would anyone want to follow Jesus if it means carrying the cross? Why would anyone choose to follow Jesus if it means taking on pain and suffering and sacrificing for others? Why would we do it? According to a Gallup research study, 12% of Americans are highly spiritually committed. They are those who truly understand what Jesus meant when he said, "Deny yourself and take up your cross and follow me." And Gallup says the members of this group are a breed apart from the rest of the populace in at least 4 ways. 1, they're happier. 2, their families are stronger. 3, they're more tolerant of people of different races and religions. And 4, they're community-minded and involved in service to others. In a strangely circular logic, by denying ourselves and taking up our crosses, being willing to live our life focused on making life better for others, we end up happier and stronger people. There's an old story about 2 brothers who were a bit wild, and they ended up making their living by stealing sheep from their neighbors. Well, one day they, of course, got caught, but rather than kill them, their neighbors decided they were going to brand their forehead with the letters S and T for sheep thief. Well, one of the brothers was so humiliated that he ran away and they never heard from him again. But the other brother was so filled with remorse that he chose to stay and try to make it up to the people that he had hurt. Whenever there was sickness, the sheep thief was there to help care for the sick person. Whenever there was work that needed to be done, the sheep thief showed up to help. And it made no difference whether the person was rich or poor. The sheep thief was there to lend a helping hand, and he never accepted pay for anything that he did. He lived his life for others. Well, years later, a traveler came through the town, and as he was sitting at the cafe and eating his lunch, he noticed a well-respected old man with a strange brand on his forehead. It seemed that everybody in town stopped to pay their respects or to share a kind word with him. Even the children stopped to give and receive hugs. Well, the stranger, of course, was curious, and he asked the cafe owner, "What does the brand on his forehead stand for?" Well, the cafe owner, of course, knew the real story, but he thought for a moment, and then he said, "You know, It was so long ago, I don't really remember. I think it stands for saint. If you would like to discover deep, meaningful life, take up your cross and follow Jesus. You know, Jesus doesn't need much to work with. You know, even Peter, who blundered so badly that day, he was able to walk the walk really well, even though he had his foot in his mouth. Amen.